Here it is, the new home of Harborside San Jose. It's a 10,000 square foot former bakery.
I'm in California, where recreational marijuana use may soon be legal, to meet weed tycoon Steve D'Angelo at the site of what will soon become the world's biggest marijuana dispensary. Did you ever think that you'd one day have a Best Buy sized retail facility? If this is a place where cannabis lives now, did you ever think it would live in a place like this?
Yeah, you know, I've always imagined this
Have you
from
really?
the time I was about 15 years old. What surprised me is how long it's taken us to get here. There's nothing more American than what's happening with cannabis now, man. Cannabis stayed the same for 8,000 years, basically. There was very little change in cannabis and the product, right? Then it collided with American ingenuity. Nothing's ever going to be the same. And we're now, talking about how the pie gets diced up and, whose livelihood is going to be effective in a positive and possibly a negative way. So it starts becoming very, very serious. It's about people being able to pay their mortgage. It's some really
keeping the farm, even,
stuff.
you know what I mean?
Keeping the farm. Keeping the farm.
California supplies up to 80% of all the weed in the US. And the Emerald Triangle, a remote 3-county region north of San Francisco, is Cali weed's epicenter, producing an estimated $4 to $7 billion of marijuana a year. It all started in the 60s. The first plants were sown by hippies who migrated from San Francisco and beyond into the hills to live private lives off the land and illegally grow weed. While their cannabis became famous and their numbers grew, the growers remained a hidden and ultra-secretive community. In 1996, California passed Proposition 215, making it the first state to legalize medical marijuana and allowing farmers to grow small numbers of plants legally for the first time. While some farmers embraced medical growing, others continued to grow illegally. Now California looks set to move beyond the restrictions of medical legalization to full recreational legalization. Sounds like great news, but the market will be open to big-pocketed investors, and that could result in gargantuan weed factories putting small cannabis farmers out of business. Will California's full legalization end up shutting independent growers out of the very culture they created?
Oh, another day in paradise. Good morning, ladies. Smells like OG.
I'm in the hills of Mendocino County to meet Casey O'Neill, a third-generation pot farmer who's hoping he and his fellow ganja growers won't lose their foothold in what might become the biggest marijuana market on the planet.
I grow very specific types of strains. I call them the Thunder Bucket Face Punch. They have very...
Wait, what do you call it?
Thunder Bucket Face Punch. Very strong, very heavy. This is the land I was born and raised on. In the early days, it was really rough. They hauled water from town, they had no money, and then one of the neighbors keyed my grandpa into the magic that was grown in the woods. And we started to realize cannabis was a potential, so this has been my home my whole life except for when I went to college.
Yeah.
And then as I came of age, and it became my farm. And so over time, it has developed into my livelihood, my office, my reality. And so, to be able to live and farm on the place that I was born and raised on is a powerful thing.
We got this, guys. We got this.
Yep. So you can see that we've got these kale plants that are kind of growing up, and the cannabis is getting bigger. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear back the kale first. You kind of make a little bunch, and sometimes we'll bundle them. I like to just throw it in the tub rather than bundling it, but it's kind of, farmer proclivities.
And so is it common to grow vegetables that you eat right next to cannabis like this?
We've been doing some surveys. 40% of our small cannabis farms cultivate other food crops for market, and 75% of our farms cultivate food crops for personal consumption. Without cannabis, I would not grow production vegetables at all. The work is too hard, the pay is too little. This is part of a system that helps make small farms work. Our entire reality, especially here in the Triangle, is supported fundamentally by cannabis dollars. Timber went out a long time ago. Fishing went out a long time ago. This is the fallout of an industrial timber regime. And this land has been used for industrial practices in the past and then sort of relegated to the hippies. And we have been able to breathe life back into it and create these micro-scale homesteads, these self-supporting farms. We didn't do this because it was a job. We did it because it was a way of life. And cannabis was part of that.
Do you think that this way of life is in jeopardy?
Yes. I looked at the future of regulation and I said, I'm not going to survive. And when the thing goes into legitimacy, the idea that we would be denied the right to participate in it, it would be a great tragedy. It comes back to advocacy and being part of the democratic process, because there's a river of corporate money heading our way from a variety of different corporate interests who would love to see the thing develop under a commodity corporate perspective that doesn't include us. And so they try to typecast us as criminals. And so to be able to represent myself and say, I'm not some nameless, faceless criminal. I'm me. This is what I do. And cannabis is part of it, and it should be allowed to be, changes the dynamic. The number one question I get outside the area is, well, how quickly can you scale?
Yeah.
And my response is, by definition, craft does not scale. I can't. There's an estimated 53,000 small farms in California that grow cannabis. And the question is, will we be serfs producing things for conglomerates, or will we be specialized micro craft scale farms?
So you guys are all sort of banding together as cannabis farmers to sort of make sure, or like hope, that the regulations that come out when legalization happens in 2016 carves out a niche for you guys.
Being able to sort of stand for that has been both very difficult but very invigorating. It's like people didn't end up out here in the hills because they were public people. They ended up out here because they really liked their privacy. And so dragging it into the public has been very difficult and trying.
And it's hard, but in a sense, you think that's what you have to do to survive.
Totally. And that's why the more effective we are at banding together and at representing ourselves as business owners, as craftspeople, the more of us will make it.
Today, Casey is hosting a recruitment meeting for the Emerald Growers Association, a lobbying group he chairs. He wants to unite local cannabis farmers and business owners to influence lawmakers in Sacramento and swing the coming marijuana legalization in their favor.
I'm going to do a legislative update. I'll talk about what's been going on in the state legislature. It's been pretty hectic. There's going to be compromises that we're not going to like, but there's going to be lots of stuff that we really needed to happen that'll be there. And, you know, at this point, I'm confident that we are making our voices heard enough to carve out the things that we absolutely must have. So we're holding these barbecues and these workshops, and we're getting the experts together, and we're figuring out how do we help our farms make the transition? Because nobody's compliant. I'm not compliant. None of our farms are compliant right now. But we've never had the opportunity to know what compliance is. And
so what is it can we do, individually or as farms, to make this thing go forward?
Communicate with everybody. Join EGA, come to Sacramento, talk to your people that are eastward. Win the hearts and minds.
I think, you know, that we all have to take that step to join the co-op and work together. So we can't all just, you know, hide and do our own thing if we want to survive.
The thing is, we keep telling our story. That's the whole point. This is, you know, families. This is, you know, lots of people who are just making a simple living, which is like the American dream, the family farm, with an honest product, really. They call it criminal, but we know it's the most honest product you can produce because it's beautiful, it's healing, and it's magic.
It comes back to, we were really successful at creating this mystique. Nobody knows anything about us. They have all these default positions about us. You guys are all like criminals and pillagers, right? And us coming and being like, this is who we are. They're like, you guys are a bunch of hippies. Okay, cool. It feels like a really monumental shift is happening, and we're shoving hard.
Can we eat now?
While Casey has successfully coaxed this band of marijuana farmers out of hiding to join forces and push the coming policy in their favor, I wonder if this is really the best option these farmers have for surviving the arrival of big business. While old-school growers like Casey are tackling policy in the hills of Mendocino, I've come down to the township of Laytonville to speak with a new breed of weed farmer. These guys moved to the Triangle after medical marijuana went legal in the 90s, and they became known as the Green Rushers. Among them were Jessica and Jamie Warm. Jamie met Jessica at Burning Man as she was completing her PhD.
I know, that's a sheep. That's a sheep. Yeah? And give us a sheep?
They are now raising their child, Donovan, on this idyllic farm where they also grow weed.
Northern California is one of the last places where you can grow and homestead, you know, on some relatively cheap California land.
Right.
Right here we have our greenhouse. The strains here I'm really excited about. So in the back here we have a Harlequin, we have an OG Black, and that's called Happy Valentine. These small things are Agent Orange. Donovan's watering.
They're tiny ones.
They're small.
Sometimes I feel a little funny talking about strains when I'm in front of my kid or kids generally.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's maybe a testament to how strong the stigma can be.
That's it.
Which is like, this is something I do all the time. I talk to people about weed all the time.
Right.
And yet I feel sometimes a little like hesitant to be like, oh, OG Kush around a kid.
Right. Something that I think we're coming out of. And, you know, that's one thing that is so wonderful about this community. This is just part of who we are, you know? The cannabis is everywhere. You know, we throw barbecues here. People bring their kids. The plants are here, and it's just a normal thing.
While it's an open secret that marijuana farming is a huge industry in the Emerald Triangle, most growers have stayed hidden in the hills due to the ongoing threat of prosecution. But in order to battle the large-scale operators who will set up shop when the California market goes fully legal, Jamie wants to be first to market. So he's taken the risk of opening a nursery on Main Street, between a thrift shop and a health food store, where patients and other growers can buy clones of his plants.
This is the spot. This is Artifact Nursery.
Cool.
Hi. This is Camille.
Krishna.
Nice to meet you.
Come on in, Krishna.
Cool.
Welcome.
This is it.
This is it. This is where patients come in and get signed in. So this is where all the plants are. This is really the nuts and bolts of the nursery.
Yeah, you can smell it.
Can you?
A familiar smell around here.
I must be used to it. The hardest worker is Ham, right here on the floor.
He looks like he's hard at work. Hey man, how are you?
How you doing?
Good.
Patients can come in, look at the clones. You know, got a lot of different genetics.
You have like 3 different sizes. You have like small, medium,
We do.
and large.
That's exactly what we have. So we start them in Rockwell here. Get you a prettier
Little
one.
babies.
Little babies. So those are $12. You've got these. They step up into 3.5-inch soil. They've kind of grown a little more, have a stronger root mass.
Right.
And then you can buy them as large plants as well. Those are ready to.
These look pretty nice.
Those are ready to
have
grow.
One of those in my apartment. So what's this one here?
That's old fashioned, locally bred strain.
What I like about your spot here is that we're in the center of town, basically. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very like clear recognition of something that everyone knows, which is in the hills there are a bunch of people growing weed.
Well, there's 2 kinds of people in Mendocino County. Those that say they grow weed and those that don't say they grow weed.
Those that are lying, right? So you're trying to, I mean, what it is like here in this sort of like weed capital, you're putting down some roots, some stake in the main street to say like, we're a business. Are there any risks that are associated with that? Like what's on the line?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean,
the
when-
risks. Yeah. I mean,
It's federally illegal,
Right.
but you know, it's allowed in the state of California for medical use, and we just are doing our absolute best to stay within the guidelines.
yeah, we abide by all the rules set forth, Prop 215, and just take that risk.
Proposition 215 was a ballot initiative to make medical marijuana legal in California and was passed by the public in 1996. It allowed individual counties to make their own rules, which include limits on the number of plants that can be grown, and stipulated growers must be non-profit, but could receive quote-unquote reasonable compensation, a term left open to interpretation. Unsurprisingly, enforcement of these regulations have been difficult for growers to predict. Federal and local police routinely conduct sweeping raids, often tarring legal and illegal growers with the same brush. Recently, Trinity, Humboldt, and Mendocino County Sheriff's Departments teamed up to conduct one of the largest raids, busting multiple farms over 4 days in June 2015, and destroying close to 100,000 plants.
Everybody knows someone up here that's gone to jail
Right.
for something, you know. It's all pot related. And I think that's a very real thing for a lot of us up here raising families, raising small children, is that there's always an element of risk. Whether you grow 25 plants or you grow 100 plants, or you don't even grow on your property, you grow on another property. It keeps us up at night sometimes. I think it can keep everyone up at night, right? Getting anxiety about the police coming or, hey, baby. You know, you worry. It's like that irrational fear that someone's going to take your child away from you. I know, huh? That will never happen.
The level of danger faced by marijuana producers like the Worms, who dare to make themselves visible, is decided by local authorities' interpretation of Prop 215. I went to speak with Mendocino Sheriff Tom Ullman to find out how he decides whom to raid.
What are some of the challenges of being in law enforcement in a region like Mendocino County where there's so much marijuana grown?
Well, the challenges are not that there's so much marijuana growing. The challenge is that the laws that are on the books are not black and white. And I'm going to say that there is no agreement on what the marijuana laws are in California. So my focus is to go after the people who are, in my opinion, taking advantage of the good-willed voters of 1996 when they passed Proposition 215.
And how are people taking advantage of that proposition?
Well, Proposition 215 was written to be a medicinal marijuana ordinance, a law. And it's a very vague law, but a 20-year-old with a sore shoulder who says he's growing to improve his quality of life maybe needs to suck it up and get a job. And the sore shoulder is going to go away. And they've turned it around to say, this is my God-given right to grow marijuana. Well, wait a minute. Is it a God-given right of your neighbor to be able to go in their backyard and trim their roses or have a barbecue without smelling marijuana? I say it is.
And I imagine since this is such a big county that the actual nuts and bolts of enforcement is kind of a challenge in and of itself.
For the most part, our marijuana investigations are complaint-driven. You know, if a neighbor called and said, my neighbor's growing marijuana and I think the sheriff's office should investigate, our deputy would go to the house and they'd look and, if need be, eradicate the marijuana, arrest the person, and see that they get their day in court.
Do you think that people should be able to grow marijuana and make a living from it?
I think people should abide by the law. And Proposition 215 wasn't a proposition on how to make your house payment. If they're selling one plant and making a profit on it, they're in violation of the law because they're a commercial marijuana operation.
I mean, the reason I asked that question is that there are a lot of people who believe that the only way to survive as a medical marijuana grower in this county, specifically as like legalization in California might come, you have to be upfront. You have to say, this is who I am a grower. But they feel that the danger of doing that is getting undue enforcement on compliance issues from the sheriff's department.
I can tell that you've been influenced by some people's very strong opinions.
Well, and in a sense, I'm trying to bring their complaints to you to see how that how you respond to them.
Remember, when Proposition 215 was passed by the voters, it did not allow for any profiteering. So while there's people who say, this is how I make my living, you know, and I have to make my house payment, and I have to pay my child's orthodontics bills and so forth, I'm saying, well, that's great, but that's not what the law is.
You know, the law might change. There's like certainly a lot of energy towards making recreational or adult use legal. Is that something you'd be in favor of? How do you think that would affect the county?
I have so many things to worry about throughout my day that I do not spend a lot of time on hypotheticals.
Sure, but it's something that seems to be coming, like the legalization of marijuana is a wave that's kind of hitting a lot of this country. And Mendocino County, Humboldt County, Trinity County, it's where a lot of the marijuana in this country is grown. So how is it that you aren't preparing in a like sort of, how are you preparing?
You know, I'm going to guess you're very good at what you do of doing interviews and knowing how to operate a film crew and whatever, okay? I'm very good at enforcing the law. But excuse me, I listen to you, listen to me, okay? No one can predict where we're going, and if we don't know where we're going, we don't know what our problems are. If we don't know what our problems are going to be, we don't know what the solutions are yet, but we'll figure it out.
Thanks, Sheriff. Appreciate the time.
While the Worms take a risk by becoming the first to market with a brick and mortar on Main Street, I'm driving to Humboldt County, just north of Mendocino, to meet an altogether different kind of marijuana farmer. Hidden among the mountains here, presiding over much larger grows, this region is home to the millionaire outlaw.
So I'm gonna meet this guy Ziggy, who's been farming here for decades, and apparently he uses a BMW as his farm truck, so he's doing pretty well.
Well, here we are, Wildcat Farms.
This is called Wildcat Farms?
Wildcat Farms.
And so this is one sort of large grow operation. So how many plants are in this parcel right here?
This is a 99 plot. Down below is Blue Dream. On the lower part of the tier, what we're walking through here is old school AK-47, and I have sour diesel. And what we found out is some of these fuely strains like the sour diesel have a synergistic effect with the opiates. And Americans love drugs.
Sure.
And when the doctor gives them the oxy, the sour D or the OG gives that oxy a little extra bang for the buck.
Like, you take a look at this and it's big. Like, this is a lot. These are a lot of plants. But like, what's the surrounding area like? What did we pass when we were driving here?
Oh, you probably passed 700 farms in the 17 miles coming up the hill. As you noticed.
700?
700, yes. There's probably $1 billion annually in cannabis money that comes to this county. You go to the gas station, they have a cash counting machine. People come in that are running diesel and might buy $7,000 worth of fuel in $20 bills. You can either weigh the 20 or you can run it through the machine, but it's a very unique cash economy here.
And where is that money going right now?
It's going into the Bank of the Stump.
What's the Bank of the Stump?
We don't bank with like the real banks because they take our money and they tattle on us. So we have to hide our money. You know, in Humboldt County, it's not uncommon to hear people talk about, I forgot where I buried 500K.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be really stressful.
It's just the reality of it.
And how long have you been doing this for?
40 years.
You've been growing weed for 40 years?
Yes.
So for a long time, like, it was not legal?
Oh, God, no. No, felony pot.
Yeah.
Felony pot.
Did you ever get taken down or busted?
Oh, gosh, yes. I've been arrested. Yeah. But never convicted of a felony. I was acquitted.
What is it like to go from something that was kind of like an outlaw business to something that is now considered potentially this corporate business?
The corporate structure of now becoming friends with the banks who have never been my friends before, and friends with the police who've never protected or served me. No. I don't want to play that charade. I'm 56 years old. I'm about done. I'd like to help take this to the legalization level and be able to hand the torch on to the next generation to improve or destroy it.
Right.
But I would like to go buy a Maserati with a company paycheck before I'm done.
Having made millions in his 40 years as an outlaw grower, Ziggy is cashing out in face of full legalization. I went to speak with the next generation of Humboldt weed grower, Ziggy's protege, Leo Stone, about the financial impact of total legalization.
You have to have a certain level of scale just so you can be profitable, because it's not a cheap business to cultivate cannabis.
Right. Let's get in it. And what are these? Can we give us
These are sour diesel.
Can you tell me like where sour diesel tends to be the most popular?
Man, sour D is the most popular on the East Coast. You know, for the large part, a lot of the buyers that come to pick up sour D are from the East Coast.
I mean, in a sense, it's an export crop, right? Because it's
really
it's so popular around the country.
I wish it wasn't. I wish we could keep the crop in state. There's a lot of risk that's in play with people coming from the East Coast and buying your crop. You know, you have to deal with the uncertainty that your buyer's not going to come back next year, because there's a lot of risk for your buyer just to come from the East Coast, bring that large amount of capital so he could be able to buy up your crop, then he has to send it back. We're taking product out of state. It would be safer we kept it in state.
Yeah.
But the retail prices in cannabis in California alone have kind of, they remain the same. You know, past 7 to 10 years, you're looking at anywhere from a $6,000 to a $9,000 pound retail.
Right.
You know, you cut that in half. You know, growers should usually be getting anywhere from like 35 to 45 a pound, which is what the status quo was for a long time. But, you know, for some reason, people are having a really hard time settling for 12 to 1,500 a pound. And, you know, the general consensus in Mendo and Humboldt is that, you know, a large part of the reason the bottom has dropped out of the wholesale market was because of dispensaries.
The illegality of marijuana has historically kept its prices artificially high, with pre-medical marijuana prices peaking at close to $5,000 per pound. After Prop 215 was passed, the prices farmers could get for wholesale weed entering the medical marijuana market dipped down to below $2,000 per pound by 2010. Once the market goes fully legal in California, it's expected that prices will drop even further due to the arrival of corporations that can produce on a large scale, making the survival of small craft farmers even less likely.
But then what do you do as growers? Do you get bigger? How do you sort of combat the falling prices?
It depends on what kind of price point you're looking for. And it depends on who your network is, because people that come from the Midwest and the East Coast, cannabis prices are inflated.
While Leo's reliance on the black market might work as a short-term solution to weed's price drop, what's going to happen if more states legalize, or if California cracks down on the black market entirely? One farmer trying to find a sustainable solution to pot's falling wholesale prices is Swami Chaitanya. He runs Ganja Ma Gardens alongside his life partner, Nikki Lestretto. And together, they're capitalizing on his reputation as a maestro grower of premium pot. Swami was born in New York in 1943 and moved to San Francisco in the late 60s, where he immersed himself in hippie culture. That spiritual journey led him to India, where he spent over 10 years. He converted to Hinduism and became a spiritual teacher known as a Swami.
And Shiv Nataraj, the Lord of the universe. And then as you dance, you can go the other leg too, the same way, the other leg and back and forth. Right? Like that.
Returning to America, he found his Indian spirituality blended perfectly with the ideology of the back-to-the-land hippie farmers who founded the Emerald Triangle. And he has since become a mainstay of the community and an expert cannabis producer.
Krishna, Om Namah Shivaya, Hare Hare Maha Krishna.
That's me.
Okay.
I'm wondering, can you take us around your property and sort of show us what you got here?
All right.
How did you get inspired to do this?
Well, actually, I had a vision a long time ago. It was on July 4th, and we're all just like in bliss with the nature and so on, and the medicine of the peyote, the sacred medicine. I had this vision as about halfway down the mountain. It's like someone turned on a slide projector right here in my third eye. And this picture was like, there was this mountain, this rounded mountain in the distance. And then there was these trees, this row of trees. And then there was this golden meadow.
Yeah.
And then behind me, these two giant pine trees. And this is like right here in my forehead. And it's this brilliant picture, right? So then 30 years later, almost to the day, we took possession of this place. And that was 12 years ago.
And how does it feel to have sort of like a 30-year vision kind of come true, but then at the same time have that vision kind of like complicated by the big business of cannabis?
If, say, in Fresno, Merced, Central Valley, they put up these huge greenhouses and they're growing thousands and thousands of plants, yeah, that could take our market away. It's up to us to promote our product, saying that this is pure, it's organic, it's grown in the sun, and it's the finest that you can possibly get, and it has spirit. And if you're going to industrialize something, you're going to take the spirit out. Who do you want to grow your cannabis, and how you want them to grow it?
You look like the kind of person I'd want to grow my cannabis.
Well, I'm very happy to do that for you. Maybe we should go look at them.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Okay. So here we are at the garden. Just walking out amongst them, you're nourished. You're kind of exalted in a way, just from the fact of the air that they're creating. These things are just in the sun, this greenness. And it's thrilling to be in the plants. We have a clean green certification, which is actually more stringent than organic. And so as a result, we don't get 6 and 8 pound plants. We get 1 to 2 to 3 to maximum, maybe 4 pounds.
So that's another kind of challenge almost that you're
That's another challenge, but that's why we're saying if you want the purest, the best, you can't be looking for quantity, you're looking for quality.
And in order for that to sort of work economically, you would need the per pound cost to sort of bear.
Right, well, but see, we're hoping that the price of cannabis is not simply a bulk commodity price, you know, like wheat futures in Chicago, because it's got to be quality priced, just like wine. You can buy $2 Chuck. Maybe you're happy with that. Fine, enjoy.
Sure.
Right? But if you want a real ambrosia, right, you're going to pay $30, $40, $50, $60 for one bottle. And we do get a premium price for our cannabis. Yeah. We definitely do.
What's the sort of, going rate for your stuff versus maybe
I'm not
stuff?
sure whether I really ought to tell you.
Okay.
Going rate for a wholesale pound of cannabis is anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500 a pound. We get from 22 to 27.
So maybe that sort of cuts to the heart of it in a sense, is weed a commodity?
Well,
is the
weed
future-
might be a commodity, but cannabis isn't.
Okay.
Right? And so actually in our movement, we are trying to use only the word cannabis because it is what you call it. And we're calling it weed. It's not a weed. Look at this beautiful plant, and it's not just growing randomly. So listen, we've been waiting a long time to get loaded here. Tell me, which one would you like to smoke? We got Cuvée here.
Okay.
And take a smell of that one. See, this is what a connoisseur will do. The first thing they'll smell. They'll smell the cannabis.
Yeah, that
and then they'll look at it.
It's piney and lemony.
Piney and lemony, right. And this one is called Orange Turbo.
And that's a little skunkier and maybe like tea.
Yeah? Mm-hmm.
I don't know, you tell me.
Which, yeah, well, no, you tell me. It's your nose.
It's your weed, though.
Yeah, right. Cannabis!
And how did you guys meet?
Known each other a long time. I couldn't begin to guess how many joints we've smoked together over that time.
Well, not only that, but how many incarnations we've had together.
Now in a very new incarnation of this relationship because...
Well, we have a spiritual marriage.
Yeah.
You have a spiritual
well, he took a lot of vows when he became a Swami, I'd say. It's not
one
just...
of those vows being celibacy?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what's even worse is he doesn't eat onion and garlic. And I'm Italian. So that's the hardest part. But...
Let's show that to the cameras, like on Jon Stewart
sort
or
of like,
something like that.
It's like Uncle Ben's.
Uncle Ben's
Swami
converted cannabis.
That's what it started as a joke, really. But then it became, the branding is for real. You know, this is something, if you're going to get into the future market, you better start your branding now.
Sure.
So we were very lucky. We already kind of had a foot in the door. We're actually getting it trademarked and everything as we speak.
Legally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it's also like you have in Swami like a personification of the actual product that you're kind of selling, right?
He's trying to make a good image.
Yeah.
You know, he fits, yeah.
Really? One of the things we're doing with the Swami Select salons is, that the people that, meet the grower, meet the farmer. So it's an educational process to say, wouldn't you really rather have your cannabis grown at Turtle Creek for $60 an eighth?
Ooh, I'm feeling pretty...
I could see Swami's brand becoming akin to the Dom Perignon of marijuana, a prestigious market position he and other small independent labels will need to hold out against the might of corporate cannabis. I've come to the largest wholesale medical marijuana purchaser in the world, Harborside Dispensary, to speak with owner Steve D'Angelo. I wanted to know how the biggest player in the current medical marijuana market and the cannabis tycoons who will follow him will affect the craft-scale farmers of the Emerald Triangle.
You come through these doors and you see this kind of like beautiful mecca of cannabis sales. It's amazing.
So here you'll see our sample cases.
All of these are grown in California?
All of these are grown in California.
Is this a typical dispensary?
Well, we are probably the largest retailer of cannabis in the world, as far as I know. When we first opened this spot, people looked at me like I was crazy. They were like, you're never going to be able to serve as many patients. It's way too big. So now we're going to go from the public part of the facility into the private, secure part.
Usually not this crowded.
So this is the intake room. This is where growers will bring us their medicine, and we put it through a quality control process. I'll show you how that happens.
So 2 big bags of weed here.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what your scale is, we would call these average size bags of weed.
Well, Larry, I'll pretend to be a grower who comes in. All right, so, hey, Steve.
Hey, Krishna, how you doing?
I've grown this weed for you.
All right, well, let's take a look at it. And so what I'm going to be looking for here is, you can see there's some little crystalline structures on the surface of the vegetable material there. So those are called trichomes, and that's where all of the active ingredient of the cannabis plant lives. There's no active ingredient in the vegetable material itself. So by looking at the size and the shape, the color and the density of those trichomes, we can get a basic understanding of the quality of that cannabis, the potency of the cannabis, and whether or not it was grown to full maturity or beyond full maturity.
A lot of your economics, I'm imagining, are based on how you price your inventory as it comes in. And for the farmer, a lot of their economics is based on how much they can get for each pound that they sell.
Well, this is really the most critical part of our whole business model, because if we don't buy the cannabis that our patients want, we won't be able to sell it.
Right. So where are we headed now?
We are getting close to the most secure part of the facility, which is the vault where we store our cash, where we store our bulk medicine. So this room also is biometrically controlled. Okay, watch your step on the way up here. So this is our vault.
Well, it smells great in here.
Yeah, well, for obvious reasons, we don't want to have ventilation shafts in the most secure part of the facility. So
people don't drop in.
Here you'll see some of the bulk cannabis that's come in recently. And so you can see here, all this cannabis is in our.
Yeah, it's branded, right?
Exactly, it's in our jars.
Is this stuff that you guys grow, or is this is farmer grown?
No, this is just our standard packaging.
Got it.
So whatever grower brings us to it, our top shelf always goes into these jars.
What is the actual flow of cannabis to money? Like, give me a sense of the sort of scale of the operation.
Well, we sell several pounds of cannabis every day, and we take in, north of $25 million a year at this particular shop.
Right.
Prop 215 requires that all marijuana companies, including Steve's, remain nonprofit, putting extra earnings into community services and charities.
We will happily embrace a for-profit model with equal enthusiasm as soon as that's legal, but until then, we'll obey the law rigorously.
Until now, Steve has been buying weed from local growers like Swami and repackaging it, thwarting any attempts they make at branding themselves. But Steve has even bigger plans for when pot becomes legal that will change the industry completely.
So right now we are in one of Central California's traditional agricultural regions, and we're going to be touring what I think is the future of cannabis agriculture in California, or at least a part of that future.
Wow. This is huge.
Yeah, this is quite a large greenhouse.
And how many plants do you think could fit in one of these warehouses, or one of these greenhouses?
It depends entirely on the size of the plants, but in the thousands of plants.
Thousands of plants, and they would produce thousands of pounds of bud.
They would.
I mean, it's exciting, right? I mean, like there's a way of looking at this and saying, like, wow, this is a lot of weed that's going to be grown here in California.
By scaling up, we're going to be able to start providing the consistency that the market's really looking for.
And would you be able to operate a place like this at full capacity under the medical laws, or would recreational marijuana have to be legalized?
Right now, this is not something that would be sanctioned by regulation. We're working ahead. We're looking forward to the day when that will happen.
How will places like this affect the sort of larger industry and the way that people grow?
There's certainly going to be displacement as this industry changes. My hope and my belief is that this industry can be created in a way so that there's a lot of different tiers for different levels of production. I think that there's plenty of consumers who are not going to want cannabis that's produced in a large facility at a large scale. They're going to want cannabis that's grown in very small plots by master gardeners. And I think if anybody's a really talented cannabis grower, or a really talented concentrate maker, or a really talented manufacturer of cannabis products, that they're going to have a much, much better future in the legal economy than they do in the underground economy. Now, people who have just sort of been skating along because it's illegal and they don't need to try very hard and they don't need to compete, those folks are not going to have a place in the new market. And I don't think that's a bad thing.
When we say big marijuana and you look at a place like that could have a potential like this, would someone say that you are big marijuana and you're going to steal my business, or you're going to steal my market share, or you're embodying a future that might not be in line with what we think the plant is?
I don't think that big marijuana is a bad thing. I think that big marijuana, done the way that every other big industry in this country has been done, is a bad thing. But we have a potential to create a new kind of industry, and that's what we need to do. Look, there's going to be a battle for the soul of this industry. It's underway already. There's going to be people who are going to try and craft it in the image of every other single American corporate industry. And the only way that that is not going to happen is if people who care about the plant and people who care about the future step up to the plate and start creating companies and start creating products and start creating brands that will be values-based propositions.
After my time here, I've come to realize that however the small farmers choose to adapt, be it by branding their farms as the Dom Perignon of cannabis, or passing the mantle to the next generation, uniting with fellow farmers to influence legislation, or rushing to become the first to market, the likely winner in this new era of legalization will be the consumer. Marijuana quality, options, and services will increase, while prices will fall. And so it goes in America. Big business will make the bulk of profits, while the tens of thousands of growers of the Emerald Triangle will fight to stay alive in this brave new marketplace. These farmers are more than just stoners making easy money in the hills. They are the heart and soul of marijuana farming in America, and a living link to its origins. And so the fact that a great number of them will not survive this transition feels like a loss. Whether legalization spells the death of the very society that founded this industry, or whether growing evolves into something even better, one thing's for sure. It's been a privilege to have glimpsed this bastion of renegade cannabis culture before it burns out.